All right, welcome back to another episode of a podcast. Your host Stephen Maxted here, and we have Mitch Calvert joining us on the podcast. And Mitch, thanks for making time today to be on here. Mitch, you are a renowned fitness coach. You're well known online in the local community and beyond. You have a degree in human nutritional sciences at U of M. And you've had a bit of a fitness journey yourself, I think is the best way to recap this paragraph that I have here. Excited to chat more about that with you and truly unlock your passion behind fitness and why you ultimately want to help others get into shape and a better health position. I think ultimately, if I can recap what you do in a sense and what you're doing online here for folks that I get to see and then in person and other coaching. So yes, Mitch, welcome to the show. Thank you for making time of your day and happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me, I love to end my sentences with that. So it should be on point with the subject material today.
The brand, yes. We appreciate that. Awesome. Yeah, and how are things on your world, Mitch? Like I know you cover lots of really cool stuff in terms of little myth busting things, because I'm not immune actually to seeing some of the stuff that you talk about on my algorithm in terms of like these random things that are like, hey, if you take fish oil 20 times a day, you could lose 5 pounds this week. And I'm always like, is it true? Because we see so much stuff. And I feel like I am knowledgeable in the space a little bit, and it's just enough to be dangerous where I think I have my routine figured out, as well as someone who likes to stay active and do different things. But you get to a point when you're out of, immediate training from, let's look at like junior level sports, you get older and then you kind of forget some of the routine stuff that you've been doing. You're trying to keep up with it. And then you're trying to not necessarily follow the fad, but if there's something that comes up that you're like, hey, this, that maybe this is relevant to me. This person has 1 million followers. I should listen to this online doctor or whatever, this ripped person online, but they're not always accurate. So maybe I'll tee that one up for you here. What's stuff that you see online that's just absolutely wild?
That's a good place to start. And our brains are wired to like seek out novelty and new, and we hope that there's a magic button, so we're easily duped when someone with following, who has authority, who happens to have a doctor's outfit on, is telling us something that we think is a shortcut.
Yeah.
So there is appeal to that, and don't get me wrong, there's maybe a place for that in the final 10%, but it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if you've seen that chart where when we think we know everything, we're actually on the peak of Mount Stupid, like very early stages. We have access to Google.
I love that.
Know it all. Yeah. And that was me back in the day, 20 plus years ago. I did keto before it was cool. I ended up in the ER with a bowel obstruction. And I didn't know any better, but I thought I did because, my brain was not fully developed in this area, right? It took 20 years of trial and error to realize once you get kind of through the valley of despair, and it's this whole cool chart, you realize the basics are actually where the foundation is built, and the shortcuts are always in the day-to-day habits. And until further notice, that's really what moves the needle when it comes to transformation. Not to say you don't have to get caught up a bit in this stuff, the new stuff, and experiment and try it, but don't lose sight of what really matters, right? I think that's a big takeaway.
No, totally. What's one of the craziest fad things you've seen online where you're just shaking your head at?
Gosh, well, everyone's trying to capitalize on the Ozempic movement by calling things nature's Ozempic. And it's just a pill, a sugar pill, that it does not nearly the same effects as Ozempic does. That's another rabbit hole, of course, that has its pros and cons. But anything that says it's a natural route to GLP-1 or equivalent to Ozempic is total hogwash. And not to be duped by the products. That's a big one right now, is people are just capitalizing on that search, right? For that really popular weight loss drug. So, that's.
I feel like that one. Well, we could dive down it, but I think ultimately the thing to mention there in my mind when I started seeing these ads, and then just this like subconscious and all this stuff, like the pool, whatever it is, I'm like, this is destined to be in. It is an effective product for someone out there. Don't cancel me online. But I feel like it's destined to be a documentary on Netflix about how a bunch of sales reps made a lot of money and then people were unhealthy because of it down the road, because it hasn't been around long enough to really know. We just had one come out, right? I mean, that one was with what are they called? Oh gosh, I'm actually blanking on this one. This will happen throughout the episode. Not Ozempic, but it was like a documentary on Netflix around like opioids and stuff like that.
Yes, and a whole family in the States that
yes,
cherry picking data and getting people addicted, and everyone dies. Yeah,
what was that drug called? I won't get hung up on it too far if we can't move through it. Anyways, but when I first saw Ozempic, I'm like, oh, this is literally going to be we might as well just start casting people for this future documentary of this and show them dramatic weight loss. And if it is effective, great, but that's not super awesome. And
if the commercials were being honest, it would be someone like stuck on the toilet, like crapping their brains out. Like that's more accurate for Ozempic, right? It's either extreme diarrhea or you're backed up for days. So you're not without side effects. Yes, you lose weight on the scale, and it might be a godsend for someone that's clinically obese that has tried it all and is at death's door if they don't change their habits. And it might be a way to kind of force less food down their throat for a while until they kind of develop a good routine, right? So I'm not one to cast it off completely. I just think there's too many people kind of trying to hit the easy button there, and might be costing them in the long run.
Yeah, like you said, there is no real easy button on that front. On the positive end of things, what are some things that folks might be able to do to help out on the positive? That's kind of, like you said, like a foundational thing that you could share with the general audience to be like, hey, these are things that we would look to start to create kind of a foundation of health.
Yeah, I mean, we call it our Big Five framework. It's like 5 foundational things you can do daily, and you might have to just start with one if you're starting from ground zero, but just refers to your water intake, getting that up. Without hydration, it's hard to change your situation. There you are. Nice.
A great reminder. Plug.
Yes. Takes the edge off your appetite. Obviously, your brain and body function better. Your workouts are better. So it's an super obvious one. So I always start there. 2 is just walking. And ideally, the goal is that 8,000 to 10,000 step gold standard. But that's not to say you won't benefit from just increasing your movement from what you're currently doing. And if it gets to 8,000, awesome. If it doesn't, it's not like it's a pass fail, right? Of course, strength training. Like I'm such a proponent of that because people get obsessed with weight loss, but they realize that you have to realize there's a difference between fat loss and weight loss. And it's very easy to lose as much muscle and bone as fat if you're just relying on cutting calories and cardio and not giving your muscle a reason to stick around. And that's important, regardless of gender, for sure.
Interesting.
And then the last 2, of course, would be like your macros, your nutrition, like the right balance that we call it the CAP, calories and protein, getting those within range where they should be. And sleep. I mean, it's super obvious. Adults, we tend to overlook that one, but it's, how you feel when you haven't gotten a good night's rest. You snack more, you move less, your willpower is drained. It's just a cascade effect on everything else, right?
Yeah, it is often, it is that way. Exactly. You become lazy, you rely more on a sugary thing, or you're adding that into the coffee. All right. And what do you recommend to get like a good night's sleep without that sounding so basic? Because I think it is something that people talk about a lot. But then they'll complain about going and buying like simple I'm not looking for a mattress suggestion in this way either, but there's a lot of folks that ignore the importance of investing in stuff such as a nicer mattress or like darken a room. Like it's just like it's the last thing that's on someone's mind. Why would I invest in something that I get no seemingly pleasure out of, in a way of just I'm unconscious in the sense of sleep? So what do you talk to people about when they're like, whatever, if they're having trouble sleeping, but they don't want to do anything about it in that way? Because I see that being a hurdle for some folks.
Yeah, I mean, if you got the means, it's 1/3 of your life you spend in it, right? So if it's a real cheap mattress and your back is sore, like a lot of people we talk to, wow, that made a huge difference getting a mattress. So I don't have the same pain. It's like, okay, well, that was the reason,
Yeah.
So at least a decent mattress that you don't feel like you're all creaky getting out of, for sure. Then it comes down to sort of a routine. Like the best tip is probably the most boring, is to have like an hour window where you go to bed and wake up 7 days of the week. So depends on your age. It's easier at my age now where I don't have late nights on the weekends very often with kids and so on. But if you can get into that routine, your circadian rhythms are kind of aligned for it. You can fall to sleep naturally at a certain time, you wake up naturally at the right time. And that can kind of fix a lot of the issues. But room temperature, trying to avoid screens in the last half hour, alcohol, caffeine, all these things can kind of affect your ability to fall asleep, stay asleep. So, yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting one. If we can dive down this for a sec. I recently started seeing another gentleman actually online on this topic I forget the name, but he started talking a lot about different alcohols and the range and variety of stuff in there in terms of both sleep, calories, and the damage that's being done. Now, although I think I've seen on enough graphs that it like drinking is less popular with newer generation, but if you go out, bars are still pretty full. I don't see less ads for drinking or like this subliminal ads for it. It obviously is a negative effect, but it's a risk that people are willing to take. It's legal. It's kind of not seen as that bad, but it's also has super negative impacts. What's going on with the sleep and the fitness side of things when people are drinking?
Yeah, the poison is in the dose and the timing. I'm not a big anti-alcohol person, but the more and more the research seems to suggest the best amount is 0. But for our quality of life and the social life we want to have, it tends to go hand in hand. So I suggest at least 3 hours out from bedtime, having your last drop, because it's largely cleared your system by that point. The issue with the sleep is it kind of passes you out, but you don't get into that really deep, or your REM sleep gets compromised and you wake up like you didn't get a full night's rest, even if you're in bed for 8 hours.
Yeah.
So there's no way to hack that. If you're drinking too close to bedtime, you absolutely will feel it the next day. Resting heart rate will be up, elevated for about 24 hours. HRV, which is an indication of your stress, your recovery levels, that can be compromised and dropped. So it definitely is not good for us, but it's fun and it's part of our social life. So there is a time and place, and you have to kind of make those decisions for yourself, right?
If you were to recommend a drink, what would it be, Mitch?
Honestly, from a calorie perspective, if you're doing a couple drinks, do what you enjoy most. Yes, on a chart, champagne and like dry wines would be the lowest calorie, but there's light beers. There's really actually, the Michelob Ultras of the world. There's beers that are designed to be health conscious, but it's all around the same number per glass when it comes to that. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not really a beer connoisseur, but there are heavier beers that come with more alcohol, which more calories, or heavier, like barley or whatever it is. So short answer is drink what you want, just do it in moderation so that you can make the numbers fit into your day's allotment of calories, and we should be okay.
Interesting. Okay. What about if we were to switch over to the caffeine side of the spectrum? A very popular thing. In fact, I think more people are posting and sharing about coffee and almost kind of like pushing the benefits of drinking it. But are there negative impacts to having caffeine or certain levels of it?
Yeah, there's a lot of research supporting caffeine in your coffee for health benefits, longevity. I think everyone's a coffee drinker putting those studies together, so they're biased. But honestly, I'm a big fan too. It's just, again, poison in a dose and timing. Some can metabolize it a little faster than others, so they can have their last cup at 2:00 in the afternoon and they're fine to fall asleep. Those who say they can drink at 9 p.m. and pass out, it's like the alcohol thing. They're not going to get as deep a sleep from that, even if they're the type that can fall asleep despite all that caffeine. So I'm all for coffee. Drink what you feel is the right amount for you. I have a point where it's too much and I get kind of jittery and anxious. So 1 or 2 cups early in the day is my limit, but everyone's got a bit of a different tolerance there, right?
That is a great recap on the coffee situation. It is something that sometimes is near and dear. Have it to help me get through the day. And I think a lot of, like you said, very popular now. There's more coffee shops than ever, it seems like, and there's different coffee. I don't know level. It's almost like the sommelier of coffees that are out there now, in terms of what shop you go to, what kind of roast you're getting. Everyone's Mitch, and how did this whole thing get started for you? What inspired the fitness journey, if there was anything? I think that I read that was part of your story, and I've seen some posts about it, but and you kind of alluded, I guess, to that. So what was the situation for you to inspire you to help others and get into this space?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't the conventional route where I was a a jock throughout high school, and then you're an athlete, so the obvious choice is to become a trainer for fitness coach. I was 260 pounds in high school, the furthest thing from a fitness coach, and got made fun of for my weight earlier in junior high and that kind of thing. The same old sob story a lot of us have. So that's sort of what drove me down the path to get in shape myself. And then,
so losing that 60 pounds obviously gave me the itch for fitness, realized how much it changed my mindset and my belief systems, and frankly, my motivation to go after my dreams and all that fun stuff. So I definitely went the unconventional route by first becoming a sports reporter, and I was working in Fort Francis, Ontario. And I was realizing I was spending all my spare time online, reading about fitness, not reading about the local sports scene. And I'm like, I might have to make this my passion, my career of choice, because it's the only thing that occupies my mind, because I'm just obsessed with it now. So I fought that urge for a while. Like, I came back to the city, took some communications, public relations jobs, then landed a job with the Rady Center, Rady JCC, which is a fitness center. So I kind of merged my two passions and got into personal training, kind of moonlighting in that regard as I worked in membership and marketing for them. So over those 3, 4, 5 years, I guess it was, at Rady, I built up my clientele on the side, and eventually it just came to a head. Free Press came calling to do a column, and then I just took the leap on my own. And that's, I guess, we're looking at 7 years ago now. Wow. I haven't looked back. So there you go. Full story.
That's cool. That's great. Well, you did a very efficient job of covering that. No, seriously, I was like, that's a great recap. And then, you also, I guess in the middle of that too, maybe to add or insert something in there, you took the degree like in that, or maybe that was before you. So you had a background kind of heading into, like additional areas of fitness, nutrition, and I mean, I've heard this said a lot, and I believe this to be an area where we would definitely agree, is that a certain percent, I think they say it's like 80-20, but more of, abs are built in the kitchen, as it were. You can not outrun a diet, basically. So it's crazy to have very smart to have the background in the nutrition side, right? Because it's fuel. It's not just food for us at the end of the day, if we're looking at it in a high performance way, or for anyone. But
particularly for the people that come to me, it's, the average person is looking for fat loss first and foremost. And they need to dial in nutrition to do that. Like, there's this misconception you can just keep running harder and going to more and more boot camps to accomplish it. And your body adapts very quickly to that stuff, and it ramps up hunger. So the net loss from activity is negated in most cases. So you do have to dial in diet. It's not as bad as people have in their heads of chicken and broccoli all day long. But there does have to be some trade-offs, and making sure you're in a deficit more consistently. And, fat loss is a means to an end. People think, oh, I've got to do this forever. No, you lose as much weight being a little bit more unsustainable in your approach, dialed in more on weekends than you typically would be. You get to your goal weight, and then you open yourself up to what maintenance looks like, and that can be quite a bit different, right? So
awesome. And I have actually, I'm really referencing my online thing, but I feel like this is most people, so maybe this is a relatable position to come from. I recently saw someone, they're like, don't go slow into your goal, go like hardcore, and then get there and then maintain from there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, depending on the person. I think there's some types that really benefit from that approach. They're all or nothing thinking, so we want to kind of embrace that and say we're going to be almost 100% for 12 weeks and then reassess.
Right.
We don't want to go to nothing after 12 weeks though, right? Like the 75 hard idea where I'm a fan of it personally, but so many people do 75 hard and then they're 75 flaccid, for lack of a better word, for the next 3 months, and they negate all the benefits. So 365 sustainable, like that's probably the headspace most should be in, is trying to find some behaviors.
But it's actually funny. We mentioned the mutual connection we had. Our shout out to Martin. He makes fun of me if I ever post about doing the 75 hard. He's like, you idiot, just do it all the time. He's always grinding my gears. And I'm like, I have done it successfully once or twice now. I've tried it multiple times, and sometimes I fail for whatever reason. Some of it has to do with, seasonality, or whatever I call an excuse for seasonal stuff here. I mean, we live up in Canada, it's Winnipeg specifically. And it can be quite daunting to get those steps in or that workout outside in a day, how do you manage giving recommendations to folks that it's a little bit tougher, without calling anyone like soft? Because I've now become soft over time. I don't want to go outside when it's weather -20. I'm like, I'm gonna break, and the equipment breaks. We spend a lot of time fat biking or skiing. I have all the equipment to go out there and do this stuff, but I don't want to do it all the time, and I don't want to work out inside all the time. It's tough. So how do people best manage that? And you also want to snack more too. It's cold out. You want to carb up.
Yeah, winter, and sometimes you can align the seasons with whether you're in a fat loss focused phase or maintenance or building muscle. Like once you get to your goal, at least once you're at a safe level of body fat or whatever, then it kind of opens up to being a bit more, designed in your approach based off the seasons. But at the same time, winter is a time to really get into a routine with indoor exercise. I know 75 hard requires an outdoor workout, so that definitely puts a wrench into it. But typically speaking, we're having people either invest in a walking pad so they can watch their favorite show and get steps, or pair it up with cycling. Like you're trying to habit stack where you're doing something you probably don't want to do, but it's with something you enjoy. And the only way you get that enjoyable thing is if you do this first or do it simultaneously with it. So that's where the stationary equipment comes in handy. It collects dust in the summer, cool, do everything outside. But in the winter, that we kind of need some backup plans in order to get our activity in.
Yeah, it's something that I find sometimes. I get primarily a home gym setup, but then I also do work out at some other gyms with my triathlon training. And this is probably more relevant for people who work out at home or whatever, but something that's kind of a non-negotiable for me is if I'm getting bored with something, is I got to go get something else. It's not usually never extreme, but trying to keep up with something that will entertain me, basically, and like a fancy, rat in a cage in that sense of like, hey, like what is another piece of equipment I could get that I can then hit a different way? Because I find sometimes I get bored at home, and I might also get bored if I went to the same gym all the time if they don't have something new. How do you manage creativity within the workouts to keep people stimulated or overcome that within that routine for them?
Yeah, it's a tough one because novelty can get in the way of results. If you're doing too much different things too often, it's hard to track progress. You don't have that whole progressive overload concept where you're getting stronger and, assessing your strength on the same movements over time. So what we do is generally every 4 weeks, we try to revamp the training plan completely and pull out a lot of the exercise we were using for that time. But we don't want to do it too often because we want them to look back on, what did you do for dumbbell bench press last week? Okay, add a couple reps or add a couple pounds. And after, 3-4 cycles of that, people's brains tend to shut off. They want something fresh.
Yeah, that's exhibit A.
Yeah. So my job is to make it look novel while being effective. And that's a tricky balance to strike.
Yeah.
Because it's the same exercises done repeatedly that work best. And it's the stuff on Instagram of someone swinging around on a, Mosi ball that's not effective, even though it gets views. So that's one approach. Sometimes it's what we call antagonist supersets. So like non-competing muscle groups, because rest period is important, but it's not time efficient. So in order to get around that, we'll pair like a push exercise with pull. And you're getting active rest when you're doing the pull movement, for example, and you still get 2-3 minutes rest for the push, but you're not sitting around kind of waiting for the next set. And then we often use finishers. I call it anaerobic abs. It's targeting your midsection with the core exercise. There's been a few research papers that support that as, a small benefit to belly fat loss. So all I have to do is tell people it's going to help with that, and they're more adherent.
They're in, yeah.
Even though it's a minute, diet still drives that bus, but any little edge helps. So yeah, having some techniques, naming things, making sure there's some variety, but not too much is really my challenge as a coach, because
for sure. I mean, as I just highlighted here, I guess that's like a common area. I maybe just thought it was more of my ADD, but I'd bring it up and talk about it today. As we were thinking here, but then the home gym gets kind of crowded and I got to move something to the garage and then move something back in or whatever I'm doing. But that's kind of been my strategy of boredom. But then I have heard on the flip side, it's just, I think this is a really good clip. I'm going to reference some weird shit today. Pete Davidson, I think, was like, he's just like talks about on some interview on TV. Maybe you've seen this one too. And I think it was like Alec Baldwin had asked him, "What's your routine? How do you stay so lean?" And he's like, "Oh, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, whatever, 100 squats a day." And apparently, whoever he had said that to followed that program for a bit and lost like 50 pounds. They just like stuck to this very basically prison routine, like for a workout. You're using your body weight or whatever. And every time apparently he'd seen him on this like set or whatever, it was like 100, 100, 100. And I was just like laughing at that little clip thinking, I mean, if it works and it's consistent, I just thought about it when you're talking about, simplicity in a sense, but on that end of things, there are a lot of movies that highlight getting shredded in prison. So maybe there is something to be simplistic and only focused on one thing, in a sense. So lots of jokes maybe made around that, but does it work? Maybe. I don't know if 100 push-ups a day is a solid routine enough, but you get bored doing it, right? The struggle would be mentally, I'm doing this again. It's like, you see your pet dog eat the same meal. We would have a terrible time doing that. But if you could get excited about eating the same thing every day, it would be way easier to keep on track. But we're not like that. We want to have sushi, pizza, burgers, different stuff in the routine, right? So
so it's trying to strike that balance between what's simple and consistent versus what's going to keep you motivated. I guess wouldn't be the perfect word for it, but like feeling fresh about it and not getting dull, in the doldrums a bit, for sure.
How important is it with clients, Mitch, to set like these goals at the end of it? Because I'm sure that's part of the boredom or the process that folks go through, and then they fall off and then they're disappointed. But what does that look like for you when you work with folks?
Yeah, if you don't know where you're headed, you're already there. I mean, I think that concept applies to everything. Like there should be some North Star you're chasing, like a dream scenario, and get super visual with it. Like oftentimes we call it our 90-day perfect fat loss blueprint. It's like a checklist we go through one-to-one with every client to start the process.
Hey,
I read
I like it.
Yeah. And so that gets them clear on what's a realistic, maybe reach goal for them based off whether it's inches, weight, or some, measurable metric. But then the more important part to that process is process goal number 1, process goal number 2, process goal number 3. What are the stuff you're checking off daily or weekly, or your KPIs, I guess? That's what's actually going to lead to the transformation. So know where you're headed, but don't obsess about it. Don't get too caught up in it, because then you're in that like chase mindset. And we want to attract results, not like really push to try to achieve them. Because that mindset shift is important as well, to just trust that things are going to happen for you as long as you're consistent showing up every day.
What do you end up seeing for an actual timeline of folks seeing results on average? I don't want to pinpoint this one, but is it like a 2-week window, a 6-week window, a 3-month window? What does it take if someone really committed to a program in their mind, and where they should expect to almost like see results from something?
Yeah, I think most people have unrealistic expectations of what they can accomplish in the short term, but their expectations over the course of a year are underestimated. Like it's amazing what you can do if you're showing up for a year, 6+ months to a year. Right. That's what moves mountains. The 60-day sprint. Yeah, on paper we can build out something that'll work in that time frame, but will you keep your results 3 months later?
Right.
Odds are no. So it's about developing this new identity, so you become the person deserving of these results, not just wanting them. You have to become the person in your identity, your habits, your behaviors, your mindset. That's when the outcome manifests eventually, if you just show up as this person day to day, week to week, month to month. So we generally commit to longer terms with our clients. Just over time, we've realized the 90-day person might actually have to come back, and that defeats the purpose, right? We want to have this, especially as fitness coaches, our goal isn't to have clients forever. It's to have, referral business, people walking around as walking billboards forever, not repeat business where they lose a bunch of weight and gain it back on their own and rinse and repeat. So that generally takes a lot longer to develop the habits, routines, and most importantly, mindset and identity to make everything permanent.
Very cool. What's something that someone could take? We talked about some stuff being like added into the routine, but something that someone should really consider not doing. Although I know you said like a balanced approach, but if there was like a food thing that they're doing on the diet side, it seems to be more heavily weighted to really truly getting results for just a overall healthy human at the end of the day? What's something that folks could adjust?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I could take shots at other things in the industry that I didn't think are optimal, but they always beat nothing. So low-hanging fruit is like the liquid calories, like the Starbucks frappe mappe cappuccino at 600 calories, whatever the,
Yeah.
And if you feel like you're craving more food right after you finish it, it's not a filling thing, and it's 600 calories. That could be a full meal's worth. Full sugar Cokes, beverages, that kind of stuff. All the cream people add to their coffee. You can add a little cream, but it's shocking how much people put in their coffee. It's more cream than coffee at a certain point. Yeah. So you chalk that all up. It's probably 300-400 calories a day on the low end. That equals nearly a pound of fat lost a week just by cutting that out, So that's probably the first place to start. If you are consuming calories in liquid form, reduce that or eliminate it entirely, and you're going to be losing weight without even trying it.
So just swapping it. I mean, I've seen some graph before, but Mitch, they're so popular online. I post every cool drink I get, like how am I supposed to I'm not going to fit in. But just having black coffee is almost like no calories. But it's not as sugary.
Americano, coffee.
Right. Nothing. Yeah. Espresso with, different mixes. That's very insightful because there is certainly a big push. And I don't remember it ever being this way years ago. Shout out to Tim's. I use them as an example because years ago it was just donuts and coffee. And then now it seems like they got like pizzas. Sometimes they got Greek food. It's strange. It's like, but then a lot of, the popularized style of drinks now are there, and they're at Starbucks and they're at other cafes, but primarily at those ones. Is what I see. And it just seems like very different, but you're right. I guess it is just leaning into the desire for sugar that we crave, or that we've kind of like leaned into. I know. Okay, actually, this is an interesting one because when I was doing the 75 hard, at about 30 days in, I found I didn't miss, or I thought I wasn't missing, like the alcohol component of that, right? You're staying kind of strict. But I found 30 days in, I was like, I do want wine today. But I was realizing it was the sugar I was like missing. It was a weird thing. Somehow I figured it out. I'm like, well, I don't really feel like a drink actually. But I was like, no, but I do. it was like this. And then I realized that it was like a sugar craving at the end of it. So then I had more fruit to kind of substitute that. But that was a weird one that I could see maybe someone going through that with one of these sugary drinks if they're going through like a withdrawal. But it was a weird feeling. It was like, it wasn't like lightheaded or something, but it was like a craving, but not really. And it was strange.
I mean, our brains and bodies are so connected. Like when we're lacking a nutrient, they'll seek out food that's abundant in that nutrient, right? I mean, it's kind of nuts, but it's a smart organism. Like if you're lacking in magnesium and you're downing peanut butter, you're low in healthy fats and magnesium, that's possibly your body trying to address like a shortfall in that, right? So it's trying to check all the boxes through good healthy foods so that you aren't in a position where you're having these massive cravings. And I talked about a dopamine detox with our members yesterday. Like, cool. Can you do 2 days cutting out a lot of the stimulants you're using, the added sugars, even the social media scrolling, like deleting the apps for 2 days? It would be torture, right? But there's some evidence that 2 days of that kind of resets your taste buds, how your brain works. So you're not seeking these quick hits of things quite so often. And it's kind of more reprogramming how our body's actually designed to work before the world went crazy and we got all these, quick hits of dopamine we can get everywhere, so might be something to experiment with if you're really struggling in that area.
No, I am pumped you brought this up. This might be a little bit of a sidebar. We can come back to talking fitness, but another documentary shout out on Netflix. Was it? No, not a documentary. Pardon me, a podcast. Diary of a CEO, female doctor, and then Steve, the host. Coincidentally, we have the same name, but they were talking about this dopamine. I brought this up a couple of times because they spoke about both, or dopamine hits is how it starts, but then they also segued into like addiction in general and how rats function through this testing and access to it was more severe. It wasn't just sugar snacks. They were talking about cocaine. The rat would seek out the drug if it was available, but then ultimately if it was given stimulants and basically low-key fitness stuff in the space. Very controlled environment though. So I think this is an extreme example with rats and cocaine and fitness and whatever, but let's pretend it's sugary snacks and fitness stuff. If you were to truly cut that off for someone, then and just have access to fitness, like you were saying, kind of cut that off. And I truly do strongly believe that too. I feel it. We spend a lot of time on the marketing company through the podcast on phones. It's one of the reasons we built a team out. I found I was spending way too much time on screens. It was unhealthy. It was like just overload. I couldn't turn my brain off at night.
Yeah.
So then having a little bit of downtime before bed, I found was super important. That's interesting that you're going that in depth with your coaching. Not that I didn't think that you would be, but I didn't know that until right now. You're chatting about a detox and like, it's all stuff, right? It's all coming at you at all the time. And so if you can't turn this off to then, help with the temple, as it were, it makes a lot of sense. That's really cool that you bring that up with your folks.
I'll have to check out that podcast. I know I've listened to quite a few of his episodes. I don't think I saw that one.
It's a good.
We can be slaves to our devices and to our vices, and in order to take control, it might mean a full cold turkey detox for a day or two. See how you come out of that. Maybe you obviously reintroduce some things, but you might have a bit more control, which is what we're all after at the end of the day.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Well, where do you see a lot of people reaching out to you in terms of like their stage, and they're like at the point where, Mitch, I need help. Oh, I want help. I want to change. What's the situation that folks are coming in and finding you?
Yeah, well, it's a few different demographics. There's two major camps. One is those who are retired and they realize, oh shit, money wasn't everything. Health is pretty important too. And I've neglected it for 2 decades, and I want to be able to travel and make use of the money I've collected, and now I can't. And now is the time to, get after it before it's too late. So there's that camp, 55 plus.
Okay.
And then there's others who are, mid-age like me, 30s, 40s with kids, and they have all the excuses for why everyone else comes first, but they realize they can't bring their best to those they love and care about because their health, their mental and physical health is in the dumps, and it's tied to their food choices, their sleep habits, their lack of exercise. So they realize it's time to make that a priority again. So that's probably the next group. And it's kind of a mix of moms and dads, I would say. But that would be kind of the two main camps.
No, that's, and what I guess, or how are folks able to, best way to connect? I mean, I follow you online and stuff like that, but are people seeking it out through website, or are they following you for a bit and then they're like, hey, it's time to make the change? And do you find the pattern in a certain season? Because I'm thinking now summer in general, I'm even hitting the gym a little bit more. Well, part of it's for training and then my ability to go out in the sunlight again, and just getting that energy from spring basically. But do you find it is maybe like pre-summer, or is it all over the map?
Yeah, it's a bit all over the map, but it has its spikes and seasons, like not quite September, but after the kids are settled in school, like people are getting more serious. The post-summer weight gain has kind of happened, and now it's time to get serious again, like October. Okay. And then January has its time, New Year's resolutions. And then the ones who left it to the last minute are kind of right now, March, April, May, where, oh shoot, I want to look good in the swimsuit. I don't feel great about weight I gained over the winter. So those would be kind of the three main spikes. But everyone's motivations happen at different times, and we just keep the conversation open by showing up daily. And when people are ready, they're ready, and they reach out, and that's kind of how it works.
No, that's good. You bring up a good point about January. I totally forgot that New Year's resolutions are probably actually the biggest spike in people's brains. Be like, oh my God. Yeah. Here's a revelation of fitness coming in. I think I know the answer to this one, but how successful are New Year's resolutions, and how much success do you see when folks come on at that time of year?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. That's one of the time of year when we let in more clients, and some of them I can tell are probably not in the right headspace. And oftentimes we'll have to tell them no, because you have to do it for the right reasons, and you have to have a strong foundational why. And it's just because it's January and it's a New Year's resolution that you put on the list because you felt you had to. That's not enough motivation to kind of stick with it for long. Yeah. So that seems to bring a bit more of that type out of the woodwork. And they may figure it out eventually, or have a tipping point where the doctor says, you got to straighten up. And then that's when they get serious. Right. But if it's just checking a box on your New Year's resolutions, not generally a strong enough reason, which is why they have such a high failure rate.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see the spike in any gym like I said, I don't go to tons just by nature, having some equipment at home base here, but the ones I do go to sometimes for other equipment or swimming and blah, 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 you see that spike, and then it's like all the regulars are kind of pissed. They're like, what is going on? Get out of here, January, February, nobody.
Yeah.
And then it goes back, it kind of like, peters off and does or whatever. But yeah, it's so interesting to hear you talk about just like the steps alone and diet being such a big impact. And why is walking, it's such a simple thing, so important for us in terms of being able to keep that weight off and just such a, essentially, if you're healthy, everyone can do it. And just, it seems so, the bar is low. It seems like just, you can do it. But why is that so effective, Mitch?
Well, I think part of it is what you just nailed. It can be done by almost everybody and almost every day. It's hard to, unless you're really well trained, it's hard to run a 5K every day. Most people are going to miss a day and then miss multiple days and burn out. So walking, your steps, almost everybody, unless they have a foot condition or some other injury, can walk, and it burns, a few hundred calories a day. The big impact, and I tell people all the time, walk more than you work out, because you can walk a lot more than you can work out, both in terms of time, but capacity to do it, right? A lot of middle-aged people, kids, stress, hard, intense workouts. They can do a few of those a week, but they burn out, get sick if they do too many. But you can certainly walk every day. And it does.
Interesting.
The studies on non-exercise activity thermogenesis, I don't know if you've heard that, but that's basically everything that's not included in a gym workout, like just fidgeting more, walking more. It's like being a roofer versus a desk worker. The roofer's going to burn almost twice as many calories a day just by the nature of their work. So how do you become more of a roofer if you're a desk jockey? Try to get in the habit of walking more, being inefficient with where you park, taking the stairs, all those little things add up far more than any calories you can burn on a treadmill for 30 minutes.
Interesting. That's definitely a mindset thing, like you said, too. Instead of rushing to these different things, it only takes a little bit to go take the stairs, right? In fact, you might wait just as long at an elevator to go up as it would to go up 4 floors. I'm just actually thinking of a situation recently where it wasn't planned for this combo, but I was like, I should take the stairs today. I did it, but normally I would totally just go wait for the elevator and would fall in the category too of trying to do those workouts. Some of it's more cardio stuff, but it does seem so simple to fit in the walking and not just be part of it. I met some great folks along the journey. Good friend of mine who does websites. He makes an effort to walk a lot. And that's like his main workout thing. Guy's in great shape. There's no magic secret. He just walks a lot. He'll take time for his little stress relief or whatever. He's just walking.
Yeah, it's the Euro trip mindset, right? Where you go to Europe, you eat your weight in baguettes, you come back, weighing less or even. It's because you walked so much, you moved a lot, and just being in that headspace of trying to park further away, walk more. And there's a linear relationship between those who walk more, who live longer. So there's something happening beneath the hood with it that we just can't overlook. Yeah. And I was the type that, if you're not sweating, you're wasting your time. That was how when I was on Mount Stupid again, right? My early stages, you know? And then I realized
it's an easy thing to think about, sorry to add in here, but it's an easy thing to when you're sweating, you're checking off you're working out, right? So, but
you feel more validated, right? But
the
little things, the walking without even thinking about it, the extra trip to get the groceries, that's the stuff where you're actually losing more fat at the end of the day, if you compare the two, because one's a hard 30-hour workout, one's 16 plus hours of whatever you do during that time frame. And getting in the headspace of trying to move more is going to help you a lot in that regard.
Now, okay, this reminds me of something else that I bought the book. It seemed like a neat theory. I think it had to do more with the spots in the world that you live. You might see where this is going already, but bought the Blue Zone book a few years back. I became kind of a fan of it, but I felt it was tougher to stick to those diets. They're more lighter on the protein side of things. It's more plant-based stuff, but is that a really effective plan? It's more lifestyle. If you've read the book and know the stuff that I'm sure you do, but for the listener, it's kind of like they identified, was it 5 or 6 major spots? Now they're kind of spreading it out to get people to check off these things, but it was Costa Rica, Japan, Italy, I think there was a spot in California. They said, I think that's where they're from. I think they just added that one in. And Greece,
They
I
set
think.
it up as a blue zone.
Yeah, they're just like, hey, this one counts. But the idea is these areas are more chill lifestyle, more family time spent around the meals and stuff. So it's a slower eating process. And then you walk or your lifestyle. You just mentioned roofing, and then I was thinking of what they talk about in the book around, having a more relaxed environment to live in lifestyle wise. And what are your thoughts on that side of things there?
Yeah, I mean, there's an inherent bias with the book author and the more recent Netflix documentary towards plant-based eating. So you have to take that with a bit of grain of salt. There's definitely some inherent threads between all of them, like movement, social connection, chilling out more often, not as stressed. But it's been rife with insurance fraud. Like a lot of these people that they say are over 100 were family members just not telling anyone when they died. I don't know if you heard this, but
I love this.
Yeah, so the blue zones are a bit of a fraud, unfortunately.
Damn it.
A lot of those people that lived over 100 have been dead for literally decades, but they were getting their pensions sent to their kids because a lot of these cultures have families in the same home, and they just decided not to share that information with the government and
well, why would you
for that many years. So
Jesus.
So there's a bit of that. Unfortunately, I don't think we've cracked the code on what's the secret to living to 100. Those who do tend to have some genetic edge that they can't quite pinpoint. I'm hopeful that they call it longevity escape velocity, where you can actually almost age in reverse, or at least age a lot slower. So that's coming out. AI may expedite that process. I don't know if you heard of Brian Johnson. He's a little too out there for me.
That's, I think, the same guy that I'm thinking of. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know him.
He does a lot of weird things. Yeah.
Yes, he's extreme. I mean, that's his whole life is just living longer. I don't know how he pays for that lifestyle. He must have made money doing something else, and then is now just.
I think he sold something to PayPal. I think actually, or something. So he made a ton of millions of dollars. So he's no longer having to pursue that. Peter Diamandis, he's kind of in cahoots with Tony Robbins, but he's kind of on the cutting edge of AI living longer. I think it's Fountain Life is his company with full body scans in the States to identify things early and so on. So I'm bullish on that. I'm not sold that we're going to be able to live to 100 just with a few changes and tweaks, but we might. And hopefully we'll be around long enough to see that come to reality. Yeah.
That'd be neat, as long as you have a good quality of life too. I know, I don't mean to brag here, but it's more, I think it's a true combo. We've had a few family members make it to 100 now. And we actually have one aunt, great aunt, is still with us, and Ida, shout out. She will not probably see this or hear it. She thinks hearing aids make her look old. She's 104 or 105 now, or 104 turning. She makes another calendar, she'll be 105. And it's not the first one that we've had do that, but it was interesting actually following. And it's weird to hear you say that about the blue zone thing, because I kind of called BS a little bit on it too. I thought it was neat. And I'm like, I can kind of get behind the theory of it. But we also had a family member on my mom's side, but it's been on both sides of the family actually. So I'm pretty fortunate. Not everyone makes it there, obviously, but few have made it. But there's one gentleman from my mom's family, and mom's family is from up north, where he lived on a trap line. Very traditional northern community life up there, and he boiled meat and would eat the meat from. He didn't know a lot of cooking stuff. Literally, that was the cooking regime or whatever. Maybe the odd can of potatoes kind of thing. Meat, eat the meat, and then actually drink or consume, I guess, for the next few days, almost like a soup, the broth from said meat being cooked. I don't even think we had regular species being cooked in this thing. It was like a trap line, like genuinely the odd animal going through. The guy lived to be, I think it was 106. I don't know if I'm getting it right. I think that's a conservative guess. I think it was actually a year or two more. It was crazy though. So 105, 106. So plus. Yeah. And it's just such a unique routine.
Yeah.
Maybe walking a trap line every day, fresh air, literally really connected with nature in that sense too. So he's getting other, not the phone, hits that we're going with. So just a very different
fake environment all day. Yeah.
Kind of relaxed in a way, not hot and on a beach eating fish, but and up north on a trap line, maybe eating some fish within that diet as well. it was just super interesting to I remember I commented on something and someone ripped me apart online. They're like, bullshit, you can say whatever you want online. And I'm like,
evil meats. Yeah.
I was like, okay, I guess I'm lying. I just mentioned it on the Blue Zone thing to be like, hey, like, what are your thoughts on this kind of thing? But it's funny to think about routines that are you just kind of stay steady on that, and that can maybe project your life. And then same with Anida, she's followed a very similar routine, although she even jokes, not to be negative on her, but she's like, I'm surprised they made it this far with a few drinking years in there. She had a pretty hard life. I had some major stresses go on and stuff, and obviously she's seen a lot of the world. And she jokes about that though too, but obviously she's made it this far, and for all intents and purposes still fairly functioning, no medication and stuff either. So it's kind of very unique. A lot of people are kind of forced to do that, but she would always do little things in a routine, right? Not use her arms to push up off chairs, little like kind of just like sitting squat things that you pick up, you've seen her do for a number of years over time. So maybe doing little routine things like that has led to her success without any coaching. We didn't have to do that for her. It's just always inherently in there. So anyways, dropping some family notes in here.
Well, and hey, if there's previous family members, there's some genetic merit that's potentially passed down, right? That gives you a slight edge, and you still have to obviously, they say genetics load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. You still have to have a sensible approach. You can still get into trouble no matter how good your genes are. But I think you're onto something there for sure.
Maybe I can't John Daly it, so to say. Is what you're saying.
Yes.
That might be pushing it. That guy doesn't even drink water. He says, right? I don't know how extreme that is. He claims to only drink like Coke and beer, basically, or whatever, which is just still a phenomenal athlete, but weird, right? That's strange.
Phenomenal athlete, golf standards. He's had so many surgeries, like it's catching up to him, his health, but he can hit a golf ball. And he's fighting against all his bad habits and still living. So there's something to be said for that too. Maybe there's a balance there where you're not too obsessed about things. You take each day as it comes. There's probably some value to that as well, versus the Brian Johnson approach where everything is measured and you lose sight of living your life at the same time. Balance.
I think there is always a balance ultimately within here too, because I always worry, what if, even training for tries and stuff, not that I'm going to the Olympics, but I do it as like a way to set a goal, so I have something to look forward to. So then therefore I have to work out and train, like tricking myself into working out. But I always still make time for going out, at least one, maybe two more social events in the week, so to say, and have a little bit of an unhealthy attached there, because I feel like if you isolate too much and only do one thing, you'll be unhappy in other parts of your life. There's got to be a little bit of a massage within the strict rules, because I will go super hardcore into that for a bit, but then it's like, then you crash. You could probably do it for like 30 days and you'd be like, oh my God, I miss all my friends. And then go out all week for like another week. And then you've not slept well and your fitness is totally dropped off. So having a balance is important, but
social connections are a part of the formula, right? If you're Brian Johnson, obsessed with every metric, have to be home in bed by 7 or whatever it is for him. I think he's missing out, arguably, on some things.
He'll have some kind of record maybe if he makes it, but then that's it. What, like, who's going to remember you, or how are they going to remember you? Right? Just that guy that went home at 7 every night. Maybe the doctors that work with him know him really well, but
but family, the people that you actually want to matter,
quality friends.
A bit there.
Yeah, interesting. Mitch, anything else we want to cover that people should know about?
No, love for you guys to connect. I'm most active on Instagram / Mitch Calvert Fitness. So I'd love to hear from you guys there, what you thought of the episode, or if you have any questions. Other than that, we're good, mate.
Cool. I'm awesome too. I just feel like good energy to slide out maybe. Just going with the flow here. So we'll include all the links below. If you made it this far in the episode, those will be attached below on our YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, wherever you may find our podcast. So links will be included in there. And thank you so much for hopping in today. So, and thanks for making time, Mitch.
Cheers. Appreciate you having me.